You've done everything right, you saved every dollar, but why do you still not feel free? This is what I'm going to explain to you today that no one else will tell you. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. This show is for you if you want to become work optional, where you work because you want to, not because you have to, because you have enough passive income coming in to cover all of your family's needs. But this is also for you if you're not just here to get rich, but you want to live a rich life, because as you're able to create more financial freedom and financial prosperity in your own life, you're also willing to share that and create a ripple effect in the lives of others. And that is what I'm here to do for you today as well. Thank you for tuning in, binging, sharing these episodes with others so that this ripple effect can continue, and especially for those of us that want to create financial freedom by the year 2030. Most of you are at least 5 or 10 years, but we're here on a mission to get 1,000 of you families financially free, and this could be you by 2030. So if you want to know more, go visit us at moneyripples.com. All right, so let's talk about this financial freedom, right? Is financial freedom even a number? And I'm going to tell you it's not. And here's why. I've got a video queued up for you that's actually a guy that called into the Dave Ramsey Show, or the Ramsey Show, right? Called in to talk to Dave Ramsey. And this guy is worth 1.7 million. But I want you to pay attention to his response. And even Dave Ramsey's response, he actually gives him a pretty decent response here. But I want you to kind of pay attention to this guy's mindset. And I want you to ask yourself, is this guy financially free? So let's see what that is. So notice they've been doing this for decades, and they both work, and she's been making good money, even better money than he has. So two great incomes to help them get here. Now, pay attention to this, how long they've been saving for.
How long have you been married?
35 years.
Okay. You are the classic case study of America's millionaires.
Well,
You don't feel like a millionaire, do you?
oh no.
You're almost a multi-millionaire.
And to me, you know, that guy that wrote that book like that, there's a difference between having $1 million and somebody that can live like a millionaire, because, you know, we've spent our whole life accumulating it.
Well, I think the difference is we have the idea that a millionaire can buy anything they want anytime they want, and the truth is mathematically they can't.
Right.
When we say living like a millionaire, when guys like you and me say that, what we mean is super rich people. But really, $2 million is rich, but it's not super rich.
Right.
But it feels good. You've done a great job. You're an inspiration to people listening right now. You know that.
Well, it's like I said, it's like I'm going to have to learn how to.
Is he? Number-wise, it might seem like an inspiration, but again, pay attention to his perspective, the caller's perspective.
Spend money.
Yep, you are. You've
no
spent
children
66
involved.
years building up one muscle, your saving muscle.
Yes, sir.
And so I would recommend a couple of things. One is that you put your toe in the water and you make yourself, by setting a written goal, you and your wife, that we are going to spend X on fun. And I don't care how much it is, but let me just tell you this, okay? Let me ask you this. How much money would you spend on a cruise if you were going to take your wife on a nice cruise and it kind of made you feel uncomfortable because it felt like it was too much, almost?
Probably 4,000.
Okay. Then I want you to plan to spend $8,000 on a cruise this year.
Okay.
Wow. You
Watch
can't
this.
breathe now.
Yeah, I know. That's a lot.
But you got $1.7 million, dude.
Yeah.
I didn't even take the sweat off your interest. Mathematically, I just pulled one pair of pliers out of your toolbox, and you got 65 million pairs in there. Because all I'm doing here is I'm saying, all right, you are very good at saving. And I don't want you to get so good at spending that you're irresponsible. Never would Dave Ramsey tell you to do that. But you're calling me saying, how can I learn to enjoy some of this?
Yes, sir.
And you have to practice.
Yes, sir.
And so what I'm doing is giving you an assignment to practice enjoying it.
Here's what's so interesting, right? This guy has $1.7 million saved. Now, if you go off the 3% rule, I know Dave Ramsey thinks it's much, much bigger than this, but if you go off the 3% rule, that means he can live on a little over $50,000 a year. But here's what's so important about this. Notice the number did not make him feel any better. He thought $1 million would make him feel good, but it didn't, did it? $1 million did not make him feel good, or even more than $1 million. And like Dave pointed out, and Dave, by the way, was trying to spin it from a more abundant, more of a prosperous type of perspective. But remember what Dave said. He's like, you've spent 66 years being a disciplined saver, And now look what's happened. Now all of a sudden you're supposed to flip a switch. How easy is it for somebody who's been taught their entire life to live in scarcity, to live like they can't afford anything, to just keep packing money away for someday? And by the way, I'm grateful he made it to age 66 at this point, but packing that money away forever. And then all of a sudden you're supposed to somehow flip the script and say, okay, now it's okay to spend. Now I'm okay to live free. They don't know how to do it. And so I appreciate the advice that Dave is giving here to say to do this, but remember who he's talking to. He's talking to people that, well, he's talking to a lot of savers that also are doing the same thing. That's why this caller's calling in. He's been listening to Dave Ramsey, I bet you, for years and doing the same stuff. The problem is Dave is trying to teach people that are not savers, the people that are spenders, the people that aren't disciplined or don't know anything about money. He's trying to teach them to be disciplined savers. Well, what happens to those disciplined savers who never stop being a disciplined saver? And just so you know, it's not a bad thing to be a disciplined saver. What's bad is you've been taught from a lens of scarcity. You've been taught that you've got to save everything. You got to put it away and save it forever and keep it going. And like he said, he was saving money, but his wife was maxing out her 401k for decades. They've been married for 35 years. Very possible she was saving longer than that, although 401k has only been around for about 40 years. But she was packing money away doing her insurance sales business, right? So she's been packing money away. He's been packing money away. They've been living, I guarantee, a very strict budget. And remember what Dave said as a challenge. He's like, how much would be almost too much to spend on a cruise? $4,000. Notice what he said when he says, spend $8,000, spend double that. I love that exercise, by the way. I do like what Dave's doing here. I just don't like the damage that was created for the years leading up to this point, and which is why Dave has to address this now, right? But he said $8,000. He's like, that's a lot of money. And he says, like, that's like I pull out one set of pliers out of 65 million. Maybe not exactly the right number to use. $8,000 still out of 1.7 million is a significant number, right? I mean, that's roughly 1/200th of what he has. He says, spend a half of 1% of your money on this cruise. Learn to spend your money. And the reason he says doing that, because Dave's going to assume that you can make at least 8 to 12% a year. And so you should be able to pull off that much. So Dave's thinking he can pull off 150,000 a year and he should be fine. But the truth is he can only pull off roughly about 50,000 a year and not worry about running out of money because of inflation, because of performance is not as good as you think, especially in this guy's case where he'd be afraid of losing any money. He's going to go in conservative things and he's got to make sure he can give himself an increase of pay year after year to keep up with inflation, things like that. And so notice that although he did everything right, it's not enough. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like you've been a disciplined saver and regardless of what this guy's doing where he can't turn on the spending hose, so to speak, have you ever felt like it's never enough? Have you ever felt like you've been saving, you've been paying off your debt, maybe you're even 100% debt free, yet you still don't feel free? What Dave didn't address was the real issue. One, the big issue is he didn't address the emotions of scarcity. Now, he did say, go try doing this, go try spending money, but this won't stop the scarcity. This is just saying, here, get used to spending money. Train your brain. He's doing it from a very logical perspective. But this guy is not coming from a logical place. He's coming from an emotional place. He's coming from a place saying, I don't feel like I can live like a millionaire. I don't know what I can do. I've only known this. And so what has to happen is he has to switch from being a saver mentality to a steward mentality, which is different. Understand this, and I'm talking to you, especially if you're a saver, right? I'm talking to you about this specifically. It's not that we want you to become a spender. And just like Dave said, don't become an unwise spender or just blow money for the sake of blowing money. That's not what's being said here. You don't have to go that far extreme. A steward is in the middle of the spender and the saver. Because understand what spenders do right. And repeat, what spenders do right is at least they're willing to use money. Think about this. You save your entire life and you don't want to spend anything. And what happens when you die? It goes to somebody else, right? It just goes to someone else. And then it becomes their burden, especially if you have to pay taxes on that money. That's all that happens. You're born with nothing. You die with nothing. Everything in between is stewardship. What are you going to do with that stewardship while you're alive? Instead of just trying to live cheap and trying to figure out how to not run out of money because of scarcity, what if you looked at it as a steward, how can I make better use of this money? As I say at the beginning of the show, how can you get your money working harder for you so you don't have to work so hard for it? What could you do to create a ripple effect through more people's lives? What could you do to actually live the life of your dreams? What could you do to actually go visit your grandbabies, wherever they might live, whether they're somewhere across the country, right next door, or even if they're across the world? What could you do with that money? What could you do to fund better causes? Now, I don't believe that all charities are great, but there might be one that you like. Maybe it's your church, maybe it's something you want to do. It's volunteer work, something that maybe has been a passion project of yours you've been wanting to work on. I'm right now living my passion project. That's what I'm doing right now, right? That's why I do this podcast. That's why I do what I do, because I know if I can create that little inkling of freedom in you, if I can get you to be a wiser steward of your money, and it can actually even start paying you more money too, what happens is that now you feel free to be able to use that money for good. That's the question you should be asking yourself. Those are the kind of questions. Those are the kind of things you should look forward to. I know that's like the last thing on the Dave Ramsey baby steps, right? It's number 7 when you talk about those kind of things. But you should be thinking about that with the end in mind. It's like, what can I do to actually make better use of this money? How can I use it for others too? Not just for myself, which it can be great. I can create a comfortable lifestyle, but how can I make my life more than just about me? Understanding a saver perspective, the focus is always on me. Right? Me, taking care of our needs. How can we not run out of money? It's very self-centered. I'm not saying that's horrible. It's very natural, human instinct. You should have some self-interest in this. But because of that scarcity mentality, you're not going to look beyond you. You're going to focus more on just you and how do you feel like you have enough? What is enough? How do you know you have enough? You don't. And this is why I say, financial freedom is not a number. Financial freedom is not a state of your bank account. It's a state of mind and a state of being. It's got to have that peace of mind knowing that you're okay. That money is no longer the reason or excuse that you do or do not do anything. That, to me, is financial freedom. So, when you're looking at this, how can you do better? Now, of course, what we teach here is different. Remember, it's always about how to spend down your money once you get there. This is a big fear for so many people. They fear about outliving their money. What we teach differently is this. If this guy came to us and he says, we've got 1.7 million and we're in our 60s, we want to live on it, I'd say, well, great. If we only made you 10% a year, which is kind of more of a baseline of what a lot of our clients get, 10% a year on 1.7 million would mean he would live on $170,000 a year. Now, I guarantee because they stuff money in 401ks and IRAs, there's no tax advantages, so they got to pay taxes on it. But still, that's about just over $14,000 a year before taxes are taken out. Do you think that would be a lot better than $50,000 a year based on the traditional financial model of pulling out only 3%? Now, if they wait a few more years, which if he doesn't address the scarcity, they will do. Maybe they want to work. Remember, we talked about becoming work optional. Maybe you want to keep working. Maybe you're not worried about it. Well, great. He could eventually work a few more years or so and then pull out 4%. And then maybe he has 2 million saved up, 4% of 2 million. He might live on 80,000 a year. Not super comfortable, especially if you go a few years in the future. How much will that be with inflation? Maybe that feels more like 70,000 a year versus 80 or 60,000 a year. Okay, not great, but at least you've got something coming in. But you could do so much better. Right. And by the way, you can still keep working. And if you made 10%, what if you took that 170,000 a year and reinvested it? Guess what? In just 2 years, even if you didn't save much more, that would be $2 million, over $2 million at that point. You'd be over that, and you could be pulling out over 200,000 a year. That's the difference. So yes, income is the thing that they want. So he's talking about living like a millionaire, but he can't live like a millionaire, at least from what he sees in his mind. And again, I wish Dave Ramsey wouldn't keep interrupting him all the time because the guy was in thought. I would love to hear his perspective more because that shares more, but Dave always likes to cut people off and just talk over them. But if you heard more, if he's like, I thought millionaires would be like this, right? I thought a $1 million lifestyle would feel like this. But he's like, no, you can't live like a millionaire. I can tell you, you could live like a millionaire. It's very possible. If you're a disciplined saver, you could do that. But the reason you won't just blow money is because you probably want to be a wise steward. You don't know how to do it. You don't know that it's about really, how do I use this money for the greatest good for all, myself, my family, and others too. It's definitely not a self-centered focus. It's more of a self-interested focus, enlightened self-interest, as I like to call it. By the way, I've got a podcast coming up on that one too. But it's really focused on That's stewardship. How can I make the best use of my money? Not just hoard it away like I'm a squirrel waiting for that winter retirement. How can I use it now? Remember, that's what spenders have figured out. They at least use money. Money is meant to be used. Money is not meant to just sit around and collect on a shelf and then do nothing. That destroys the purpose of money. Money can be an amazing tool to bless more lives, yours and others. How are you going to use it for that? Now, I'm oversimplifying this to some degree, but I know for some of you, you've already had a little bit of light bulb moments or ahas, and that's good because you got to do this. Again, I like what Dave had him do. Spend money. Do it. Just try it. But when you do that, you got to ask yourself, listen, like, I've got more than enough money. I am more than abundant. And this is what I'm going to focus on in these next few episodes about this abundance mentality, is that is everything. You don't have an abundance mentality with your money, you will never be financially free. Again, it's not a state of an amount of money. It's not a state of what shows up in your bank balance or what shows up in your wallet. It's a state of mind and being. It's going to be something you feel through and through. Again, money cannot be the main primary reason that you do or do not do anything. Now, he might say this, and think about it. Dave Ramsey gave him the idea about a cruise. Maybe this guy and his wife don't give a crap about cruises. Maybe a cruise isn't something they want to do. Great. Find something else that would be worthwhile doing. Because honestly, I mean, a cruise, I've never been on one, so I don't know what I'm missing out on. But, I'm kind of indifferent. I'm like, oh, whatever. Like, I'd rather be on land and enjoy it, rather than be on the sea. Now, if I get to see cool things, cool. Like, I know there's like Alaskan cruises, some Mediterranean cruises, you get to see places that you wouldn't normally see. Awesome. But I wouldn't mind to say, you know what, boat, move on. I found a place I like. I'm going to stay on land for right now. And then maybe I'll travel through there, So again, like to me, a cruise wouldn't be worthwhile. But if you said, hey, Chris, we're going to go to Switzerland right now. We're going to do this. Or like one of my bucket list items is to hike the Camino de Santiago. I just barely talked to my mom's neighbor about it. They came back from it recently. That to me would be worth it to spend maybe up to a month and a half hiking, and staying at hostels and stuff. And, and when I say hostels, I don't mean like hostile environment. I mean the hostels that you stay at, right? As you're going through Europe, hiking that pilgrimage, I think that would be a really cool spiritual experience and a great way to connect with people of different varieties. I think that would be fun. And so for me, that would be something I'd say, forget 8,000. How about 80,000, right? Maybe not. I don't know. Even me, I just, I struggle sometimes depending on how much would be uncomfortable to spend, just because I like to reinvest my money. I like to keep growing my wealth and expanding my stewardship more. I'm not at the point where I feel like I could just stop it. But I do feel like there's a point I can still enjoy it, if that makes sense. So anyways, I don't want to keep belaboring on about me because this is about you. If you've been a disciplined saver, you've got to switch that to that abundance perspective, which is a steward perspective. You got to switch away from that. You got to switch to money is no longer the reason or excuse that you do or do not do anything. That guy, I promise you, will never be financially free. I don't care if he gets to $2 or $3 million. He won't feel free. It's not about the money. It's about how you feel about the money. And yes, it does help when it pays you a little higher income than you would when you're gambling it in stock markets and things like that. So that's my advice to you is, one, start to ask yourself these real questions about how can I be a better steward of my money versus a better saver? And then two, how can I get my money to pay me more so it's working harder for me instead of me working so hard for it? I'll tell you this, if you like to figure out how to do that more, on our website, there's that passive income calculator. You can actually get a pretty accurate number of how much you could be creating in the next 12 months with your current situation. I wish that guy would go over to our website as well and find out that he probably could create at least minimum 170,000 a year, maybe more, depending on where his assets are. And so take a few minutes, try out that passive income calculator at moneyripples.com. Go and make it a wonderful and prosperous week. We'll see you later.